Hello, hello, hello! Welcome to Open Source episode 25. And I'm very excited for today's show. We have two brand new guests. Iqbal, do you want to say a quick hi?
Hi, everyone.
Sven, you want to say a quick hi?
Hi.
And returning, of course, we got the suave Rory.
Hello, my dears.
And Mark with his ever-changing and delightful new background. Say hi, Mark.
Everybody.
Excellent. So, to kick things straight right off, Iqbal, could you please introduce yourself and tell us why have you decided to join our community?
I'll just give you a brief introduction about myself. And I've been in insurance for about more than 50 years now. And a lot of people ask me, you've been there for 50 years, didn't you ever get bored? And my answer would always be, I've enjoyed every single minute of my profession and still enjoying it. So, of all this time, 40 years had been spent in Dubai, in the United Arab Emirates, where I've been very strongly involved in the insurance industry. Lately, heading a group of Islamic insurance company with about 250 people. And I was able to train a lot of people, a lot of locals, because the UAE nationals, for some reason, were never attracted towards the insurance industry. They like banking, they like government jobs and all that, but for some reason, the insurance industry never attracted them. So I've been able to send them out for training, trained a lot of people through lectures and all that, and I think alhamdulillah, it was quite successful. Then I retired in 2015, came and settled here. I'm a Canadian citizen, came down and settled in Toronto. I was brought out of retirement, and I currently sit on the board of the largest company in Pakistan, which is the AFU General Insurance Company. I sit on the board of them, and it makes me very proud because this was the company I started my career with more than 50 years ago.
Wow.
Just a 19-year-old. And it was a pleasure for me when they invite me back to sit on the board. It's an honor for me. This company is the largest company in Pakistan now. It's run by a very strong team of professional people. The result itself shows what sort of work they're doing. They've done a fantastic job. The team at the top is very, very strong. And that's the top. You ask anybody and they would know. So I'm personally very proud to be a part of this company. So my involvement is there. I go and attend board meetings, and I'm also while I was there, I was doing a course in corporate governance. So I have a degree in in education and corporate governance, which I give lectures on during my travels and time. And talking about corporate governance, I usually talk on family-run businesses. This I advise for a lot of my clients. I now have my own consulting firm,
Wow.
which people approached me to help set up this thing. And if anybody wants to set up something in Dubai, I work with them closely, or any advice they want. This is what I do. So I'm still not retired. I'm still doing it.
And somehow you found time to also join our community. And what is it you're hoping to achieve by joining our community?
The reason of joining this community was that to keep in touch with the community. I've been very actively involved, and I have established very good contacts and some very close friends all over in the European markets, among the reinsurers with whom I've interacted, among the top brokers. I've worked with almost all of them, and it has been a pleasure. And now, you see, I'm still in touch with them, but joining this group, it gives me a platform to keep in touch for networking, and primarily to learn some more. I'm still learning.
Of course.
So that was one of the reasons.
Excellent. No, thank you so much for that. Sven, could you tell us a little bit about yourself? And of course, we had a brief introduction before from Cookhouse, but I would love to hear it from yourself. And also, why have you decided to join our community?
So yeah, first of all, I have to admit, 50 years in the industry, that's hard to top, Iqbal. So kudos to you. I don't think I can even make it to 20 yet, maybe 20. But so it's great to hear how passionate you are after 50 years. So that's definitely great to see. And I 100% agree. It's one of the most exciting industries once you're in there. I think looking from it from the outside might be a bit different though. So yeah, I actually started my career. I'm a geographer by nature, by education, but then started working in as an environmental risk engineer for insurance, and found my way into topics around IoT, and was always on the innovation side, working in the insurance industry at the beginning from Germany, where I was born, and then I moved and spent 5 years in the UK, where I was working there also with a lot of the UK and European insurers. And then almost 5 years ago, I moved to Toronto, Canada. And so my passion has always been more on the technical side and on the insurance side, finding ways on how to improve in the insurance processes. And I think for the last 5-6 years, when I've really worked in most of my time also in innovation, I'm part of a larger IT consulting firm which is based in Germany, called MSG, and there I am the head of innovation, and it gives me a lot of opportunities because we're present in 26, 27 countries where we have offices. So it allows me really to have a very global view on what's happening in the insurance area. And then also coming from this and taking this into also some sort of local markets, like if you look into Canada, of course, helps a lot also to develop these kind of markets. What I find interesting personally about the insurance and the work that I'm doing is specifically that I can focus on the customer side specifically, and try to make what we call, and that's also the nature of Cookhouse Labs and why it was born, to make insurance better. That's the goal, as simple as it sounds. But the idea behind this is not to just create an innovation lab for insurance just for the sake of it, but it was born out of the idea 3.5 years ago now, to create a space where the insurance industry can come together to collaboratively tackle the challenges that the industry is facing. And those can be absolute various challenges, from more on the customer side, like millennials. How do you bring financial literacy topics into millennials? How do you make this exciting to attracting talent to the industry? But also then very technical topics around, how do you deal with emerging markets, or also new technologies that are coming in and new risks, for instance, with autonomous vehicles, semi-autonomous vehicles now sharing the roads, and what does it mean for an insurance industry? So, and obviously, ultimately, also, we have been doing quite a lot around blockchain as well, especially when the topic came up in the insurance, and there was this peak about, we all need to look into blockchain. It's going to be a big topic for us. And then it cooled down. And I think also with the current situation of COVID, I think most of the insurers are looking a bit different into these topics, and mainly trying to focus really on getting in front of the customer as soon as possible with any digital interface they have. But the topic around blockchain is definitely not out of the way. So for me personally, this is an interesting way to join your community, to stay connected with this. For me, as really being interested in this, and haven't had the chance to gain some knowledge also on the development side. We did some development projects also with insurers around blockchain, but as I said, like, they're not really progressing. So to see, like, have the ears open what's happening, great opportunity, and thank you for having me.
No, it's a pleasure to have you. And since you've got the mic at the moment, could you tell us what is it in the news that you found interesting this week, please?
Yeah, so it's a news that always pops up, I think, since March, I would say. But I read an article about this in one of the Canadian insurance news, and it was, how the perception of insurance in general changed due to COVID-19, and it wasn't for the good. So I think that's the first thing. So I like to kind of say about this, they're the good, the bad, and the insurers. So, and I think somewhere there we are probably seeing the insurance industry. The industry always had a bit of a problem lately, changing the perspective. And what I read about this, and also it's similar to what we also noticed. I mean, clearly insurance has a societal benefit, and I think there's no doubt about this. And it was born out of the community aspect, which community in these days right now is more important than ever before. But what was born out of a community aspect, and I mean, obviously London also played a very big role in this, became very quickly a financial institution and needed a lot of regulation. And and with all this regulation and over-regulation, it became technically just a financial transactional market, where at the end it was not so much, or nowadays it's not so much to sell the peace of mind or the ease of mind also to a customer, to say, like, if something happens, you're covered. What I think right now is happening in the market, what is being sold is a piece of paper, and the promise to pay if something happens, and the perception there from the customers, especially nowadays, is, well, if something happens, the piece of paper will be held in my face, and somewhere is the small print that I didn't understand before, which says, sorry, but you're not covered for that. So all this, of course, does not help. What we've seen, for instance, in Canada right now is the premiums for business insurance are raising, like, to a peak. Like, the government right now is really in big concern about this, and is intervening, because they say, like, look, we are in the worst pandemic that we ever have faced here in history, and the insurance industry, which on one hand, of course, make a lot of money by saving claims costs, because nothing is happening, for instance, in areas like auto motor insurance, but then they're increasing the premiums tremendously now for the business insurance. So whatever is happening right now in the insurance industry, thanks to COVID, is probably not for the best. So I really hope that that the industry also sees a lot of opportunities in this, and can take it around and actually get out of it in a very proud way, and say, like, we're here to support the community. And I believe in this, and I know that the insurance is good for this, but definitely there is some challenges that comes with it.
That's 100% true. But it'll be interesting also to see the insurtechs that step into the game to try and fill those challenges, perhaps more faster than the incumbents can do. Mark, could you tell us, what is it in the news that you found interesting this week?
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, Sven, what's really interesting for me, for that underneath it all, is trust is one of the foundations things. And what we're finding is the way we treat customers increases or erodes trust, and it's generally one or the other. So that's definitely a big one to think of. So for me, the thing I liked this week was around art, and I'll put the links up to a site called the Robert Alice, and it's a project around something called Portraits of Mind, and it's a collaboration with artists, creative developers, and blockchain stakeholders, and it culminated with a bidding war for basically a grey disc, and behind me is kind of an example of the art installation. So this grey disc has got 322,000 digits of code, about 4 feet across. It's even got 24 karat gold leaf, and it was auctioned at Christie's for over $130,000, and it's part of 40 pieces of art, and it's called Block 21. And what it does is it's actually a non-fungible token. So it's got a blockchain involved. In this case, it's Ethereum, and it's got a unique identifier, so you can actually track where this art exists in the world. And there'll be a series of them. But what's interesting around it is really, in the crypto art world, we're starting to see royalties for artists being paid for secondary sales as well. So whenever the artwork is resold, then the commissions will be passed on. And this has been likened to when Gutenberg produced the printing press, and it democratized knowledge. So we're starting to see a democratization of ownership and royalties going direct to artists. But it's just a beautiful piece of installation as well, so worth a look.
Excellent. No, thank you for sharing that, Mark. Iqbal, tell us, what is it in the news that you found interesting this week?
Walid, what I read this week is about uh, telemedicine, the growth of telemedicine uh, throughout the world, because COVID, it seems, has benefited the telemedicine industry, telehealth industry. People cannot go out to see their doctors, so telehealth provides them the facility to go to a specialist, talk to a specialist through this facility from the comfort of their homes. They talk to them on the phone, talk to any specialist, and they communicate with them. And specialists which may not be easily approachable for because they're busy, but telehealth arranges with their platform. They have a number of doctors and specialists, so they put them in touch, and this facility is there now. Telemedicine in UAE has grown substantially. I mean, it's still a new concept in the UAE. It's maybe about 4 years old or 5 years old, but it has grown substantially. Allianz has set up a telemedicine company in partnership with NextCare, which is a UAE-based telemedicine service, and I'm told that they're doing very, very well. And there are other companies like Health at Hand and so many others who particularly specialize in telemedicine, and apparently they are doing very, very well. They're doing very well. So there has been a substantial growth taking advantage of the COVID this thing, and the insurance industry works very closely with these telemedicine companies. They provide the facility, and ultimately they are the end users, and they pay for it. So this was what attracted my attention, and I feel there is going to be a substantial growth in this industry.
Of course. No, thank you very much for sharing that with us. Rory, what is it that you found interesting in the news today?
Well, mine builds on Sven's own a bit, and the one we just heard, and Mark's build around that about trust, and the point really around insurance being a piece of paper with small print instead of a protection. And so my is more specifically Mark's response to the McKinsey report on the future of insurance. So it's a bit of an echo chamber piece, you have to forgive me. By way of background, last week or the week before, I shared the McKinsey report on various platforms because I find it kind of interesting. But in his response, Mark was like, not that interesting. It could have been published at any time in the last 30 years. And I guess underlying that, Mark, you probably think it's going to be trotted out in another 10 years now.
Every year for another 10 years, yes.
But anyway, then in your piece, Mark, you challenge some of the focus points of the report, saying it highlights certain challenges around product and simplification because that's McKinsey's own best business case. That's where they, as consultants, can make the most money helping in these sort of traditional sectors. So I must admit, I hadn't thought of it that way, but now that I do, it makes a lot of sense. So thank you, Mark.
Excellent. No, indeed. Thank you, Mark. Sven, back to you. Could you tell us what is it in the news that made you wonder this week?
Yeah, so it's a bit maybe a far stretch that what made me wonder, but knowing the background that I'm a geographer and specialized in geology, I'm always looking also what happens outside of the insurance world. And what I read this week, which made me wonder, first of all, we found water on the moon, which is obviously the moment we found water outside of our planet, it's always a big thing now. The moon, we have quite a good understanding, but it just means if we find water there, it also comes with the first detection that I read now that they're planning now to build, they build actually a space station near the moon to make sure to colonize the moon. And of course, that also raises the question of insurance. And with this even came another one. I don't know if you saw this, but it was also just from that I read in the news. There's always on and off. Like sometimes you hear from someone official that UFOs are real, So now we're colonizing the moon, which means we are actually becoming the ones that are leaving the planet and, becoming aliens ourselves. So what's going to happen when we hit the aliens and meet them? Maybe on the moon. But if we think about this, it just opens up a complete new area of where we need to think of in the future. And I know seems always like very science fiction, but I still, who would have thought that there's a big industry around, satellite insurance, if you think about this. So it's not such a far stretch that we are currently only thinking about, whatever we're going to insure, the insured objects needs to be on Earth. But aviation obviously is another example. But if we think about it, we build space stations. We're going to build probably spaceships in the future. And it's another thing to also think as an industry around this, how we're going to insure this, because most likely governments will not always cover all the costs and all the risks that come with it.
Very
Sven,
true.
it's very interesting, isn't it? Because I guess in the early days of marine transport and the early days, therefore, of bond insurance, you had all those maps which had monsters on the sides to indicate, could be anything over here. And I guess our modern maps end with the Earth, but they'll soon be a lot broader. And marine transport got familiar with maps and much more comfortable with it. And I guess we're just enlarging our map.
And I think, again, like if we always see, like, we trust in what we see and what we know, but, to open your horizon, and sometimes as crazy as these news sound, they become reality. And yes, there was a time when we all thought we're living on a disc, right?
Yes.
So, and I think we changed our perspective. So we will definitely, if we think about the future, we also need to think about this. Yeah.
True. Well, Rory, since you made this very pertinent comment, how about you tell us what is it in the news that made you wonder this week?
Well, before that, one of my wonders is who is insuring Area 51 in Nevada at the moment. That would be interesting to know, wouldn't it? Is it anyone on this planet? Anyway, so my real one of the week is the Ant I.P.O. So this is the biggest I.P.O. in history, avoiding all Western stock markets. So, my wonder, is this the tipping point somehow where politics and economics are more intertwined than ever, acting as some kind of staring contest between the superpowers? And we'd seen the beginnings of this, hadn't we, with Huawei and so forth, but this feels like a very carefully staged managed escalation and the next step in a dangerous proxy war. And when you look at insurance and reinsurance, of course, it's proved pretty resilient historically. It survived dual wars and all that kind of stuff, but this is a big one, isn't it? And what does this do to global markets like insurance, I wonder?
No, of course, very good point. Thank you for that. Iqbal, what is it in the news that made you wonder this week?
I was wondering about this news item that I came across, again pertaining to the United Arab Emirates, because that's still my area of interest. This is where I spent so many years. Now, the new news was that the government has decided to merge the UAE Insurance Authority, which is a governing body governing all the insurance industries and all that. The UAE Insurance Authority is merged with the UAE Central Bank. Now, I was wondering how it worked out, but I think it's a good move, very sensible move. Ultimately, it will work out. What I'm concerned about it, the UAE Insurance Authority, which governs the laws and this thing, it's run by insurance, by people who are not insurance people, have nothing to do with insurance. Of course, under them, they have the Emirates Insurance Services, Emirates Insurance Association, where all the insurance companies are members. There they have some good qualified members, and then they have different motor team and the marine and the property insurances team. They get together. These are all things. They perhaps give the feedback to the authority, and that's how it is run. But now I think with the UAE Insurance Authority and the UAE Central Bank merging together, this is going to make the insurance industry in the UAE more streamlined. Mm-hmm. And again, for the small market like UAE, there are too many insurance companies and too many brokers. these numbers have got to be cut down if they want to streamline. The UAE insurance industry is pretty big. So the numbers have to be streamlined. They've got to cut down. Some companies are doing nothing. So there, it's absolutely necessary, and this demands a lot of acquisition and mergers. So what the government did, they raised the capital substantially. So those who cannot bring in more capital, they have to go. But this has been kept on. The date has been kept on extending, giving them more time. But now they have to finalize that and reduce the number of companies in the market. Of late, there has been some mergers. One was in one of your sessions, Vivek had mentioned this, a merger between Dar Takaful and Noor Takaful. Dar Takaful bought over this insurance company, Noor Takaful, and it has proved to be a good acquisition. The company is doing very well. You can see the result now. So these mergers and acquisition will definitely have a positive result. The government should focus more on these mergers and the number of brokers. You see, a lot of brokers are there. Some hardly have any business, but they have a choice to either close down and go. But the reason, you see, they cannot go because they have given a lot of credit in the market, issued policies on credit. So if they go back to the UAE Insurance Authority, look, I want to surrender my license and I want to leave. This is fine. If you want to leave, you collect all the premium, get a clearance from all the insurance companies that you do not owe them any money, then you can go. So where does he go to collect the money? Because the companies which are supposed to pay him the premium, they've already left the market and gone, left him high and dry. So there is no bankruptcy law. He cannot declare bankruptcy. So he has to keep his company open until he generates some money from somewhere and pay the insurance companies the premium out of his own pocket. Wow. And get a clearance that he owes them nothing, then he can go. Now, this is a very serious situation. The companies are doing nothing. They've retained all the staff, one man, and just sitting. But the people who are supposed to pay them the premiums have gone from the market, disappeared. I was talking to one of the leading brokers. He said, look, I want to wind up and go, but I can't. Unless I get money from them, how do I go? I said, then you're stuck. I said, absolutely, I'm stuck. So this is a very sad state of affairs. The government should step in and find a solution to that. How can you hold on to these companies and brokers who hardly have any business, neither at the same time do they have any money to pay the premium? Crazy. So this is what is happening, and I was wondering about what will be the solution for that, how is going to be resolved. So only time will tell us. Let's see.
Indeed. No, thank you very much for sharing that story. That's fascinating. Mark, could you tell us what is it in news that made you wonder? A pile of garbage?
It is rubbish. Made me wonder. So last week we were thinking about the some of the circular economy, and it was an article I read with an interview by a guy called Michael Groves. He's the founder and CEO of a company called Topalytics, and they're a data analytics firm, and they focus on waste. And now you might not think that waste is particularly attractive, but I was looking at an article by the World Bank, and in 2016, cities around the world generated an estimated 2 billion tons of waste. And that's expected to rise to nearly 3.4 billion tons by 2050. Just kind of crazy. The other stat that blew me away, and I'll put a link to the World Bank report in, was even though only 16% of the world's population is from high-income countries, these high-income countries generate around 34% of the waste in the world. So it is absolutely crazy. Now, what Topalytics are trying to streamline is actually waste transparency in supply chain. So they've produced something called the Waste Map, and it's an analytics platform that shows you things like where do you produce waste in your value chain? What's the value of that if you put it in, for example, landfill? So in the UK, we have to pay a landfill tax. I know because a few years ago I was involved in buying a landfill business. Really expensive. Versus what's the value you can generate by recycling this as well? So what's in effect the asset that you own? And again, a great example of of where there's so much waste is e-waste, so electronic waste. And again, the UN came out with a report in 2019 that more than 50 million tons of waste are electronic waste, and in fact, 7% of the world's gold is believed to be contained within e-waste again. So the idea behind this and people like Topolytics and their e-waste piece is, how do we get people to think about reusing materials in the circular economy, and rather than building redundancy into hardware, you sort out ways that you can reuse it, because a lot of the stuff that we've got in components, and Apple, for example, have tried to work on that and making components easier to extract. So what it really got me wondering about is, how in the insurance industry can we support and encourage customers to reduce waste, and how can we measure our own waste? We've got a lot, and it's in time, it's in process, and how can we be more efficient in the way that we change behaviors as well within our industry? I think we've got a lot to do. So that was my one.
Definitely. And I guess to bring it back indirectly to Sven's point, maybe we're going to start dumping it on the moon if we have no alternative. But hopefully that there will be. I mean, when we've got great initiatives like the one by David Katz from the Plastic Bank, which is how can we transform waste into social good, something that has monetary value, that can provide a source of income for people who are destitute. So there is lots of potential. It just requires a bit of innovation and perhaps some pressure from the insurance companies, or incentives, I should say, instead of pressure. But on this note, I'm going to thank you both very much, Iqbal and Sven, for joining us in this show. Mark and Rory, as always, a pleasure. And to you, our dear audience, thank you so much, for watching this episode. If you'd like to be part in one of our upcoming open source episodes, please don't hesitate to contact us, and we'd love to have you so we can hear all your insights about what you found interesting in the news. But for now, we're going to wish you all a wonderful rest of your day or evening, and we'll be catching you next week. Take care, guys. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.